In December 2024, something unusual appeared on a frozen drop zone in Alaska. Paratroopers from the 11th Airborne Division were testing a vehicle that had just rolled off production lines in Sweden. What they discovered during those Arctic drills exposed exactly why Russia and China have spent the last 3 years quietly panicking about America's northern flank. The vehicle is called Beowulf, and it's not just replacing 40-year-old Cold War relics. It's rewriting the entire playbook for Arctic warfare at a time when the far north has become the most contested frontier on Earth. Here's what nobody's talking about. While Washington spent 2 decades fighting in deserts, Moscow and Beijing were building a strategic partnership in the Arctic. Russia militarized its northern territories. China declared itself a near-Arctic state, despite being 900 miles south of the Arctic Circle. Together, they've positioned themselves to control shipping routes that could reshape global trade. The Pentagon noticed, and their response wasn't a new missile system or another hypersonic weapon. It was a tracked vehicle that can swim through icy water, parachute from aircraft, and operate at 50 below zero. By the end of this video, you'll understand why a seemingly simple transport vehicle represents America's most strategic Arctic investment, and why adversaries are watching every single one that rolls into Alaska. The U.S. Army has operated in Alaska since World War II. For decades, troops there relied on the BV-206, a Swedish-designed tracked vehicle officially called the Small Unit Support Vehicle. Between 1983 and 1989, the U.S. military purchased 1,100 of them, with the majority going to Army units in Alaska. By 2020, these vehicles were museum pieces. Based on 1960s and 1970s technology, they were experiencing catastrophic failures. Fire suppression systems failed so often, the Army had to retrofit them after multiple vehicles burned to their frames. The Mercedes diesel engines were unreliable in extreme cold. Parts were no longer manufactured. But here's the mystery. Why did it take until 2022 for the Army to select a replacement? The answer reveals how dramatically the Arctic's strategic importance has shifted. When the BV-206 was procured, the Arctic was a frozen backwater. The Cold War had ended. Ice made northern sea routes impassable. Nobody cared about the high north. Then everything changed. Arctic sea ice has been melting at unprecedented rates. By some projections, the Arctic Ocean will be nearly ice-free during summer months by 2100. Russia began heavily militarizing its northern coastline, building bases, modernizing submarines, positioning forces. In 2018, China published its first Arctic policy, claiming to be a near-Arctic state with legitimate strategic interests in the region. The Northern Sea Route, connecting Asia and Europe through Russian waters, could cut shipping time by half compared to the Suez Canal route. China and Russia are racing to exploit this economic opportunity. Beijing has invested billions in Russian Arctic LNG projects. Moscow has stationed advanced missile systems across its northern territories. By 2022, the Pentagon realized it had a problem. The 11th Airborne Division, America's designated Arctic force, was operating Cold War equipment in an environment that had become a focal point of great power competition. Russian and Chinese bombers were conducting joint patrols near Alaska. NATO exercises in the high north were expanding. The Arctic had become a potential flashpoint.
What airborne forces do is they allow you to strike deep into any area, and so this mission we did today was also with an infantry battalion task force, 3,000 miles, 7 hours. We flew out at both J-Bear and Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington. So 2 separate locations, converge in the air, aggregate for effects, and then joint forcible entry really anywhere in the world.
The Army needed a vehicle that could do everything the old SUSV could do, but faster, farther, and in a fight. The competition came down to 2 finalists, BAE Systems Beowulf and a team offering the Bronco 3. Both were tested mercilessly in Alaska from August 2021 to January 2022. Beowulf won, but winning the contract was just the beginning. To understand why Beowulf matters, you need to understand Arctic warfare. It's not like fighting anywhere else on Earth. The Arctic doesn't just challenge soldiers, it breaks equipment. Lubricants freeze solid, batteries die in minutes, metal becomes brittle and shatters. Vehicles designed for temperate climates simply stop working. Soldiers can't survive more than hours exposed to the elements without shelter.
The temperature and the weather, obviously the biggest challenge out here, factored in with everything else as well, but that specifically, especially out on the water, because we've got the wind chill, as well as obviously the the water that freezes instantly as well. And if we're heading off down the fjord at a boat group at like 30 knots into a 30 knot wind, it can quickly become down to minus 60 plus. So we've got to take that into consideration as well.
Then there's the terrain. Arctic operations span everything from frozen tundra to coastal waters to steep mountain slopes. Standard wheeled vehicles sink into snow. Traditional tracked vehicles lack the ground pressure distribution needed for soft terrain. Amphibious vehicles can't handle ice. The old BV-206 solved these problems with elegance. Its articulated, twin-body design distributed weight across enormous rubber tracks, creating ground pressure low enough to float on snow. The front cab carried the crew and controls. The rear unit was modular, configurable as cargo carrier, ambulance, command post, or weapons platform. Articulated steering let it navigate terrain that would immobilize conventional vehicles. It was amphibious, propelled by its tracks and water. It could be slung under a CH-47 Chinook helicopter for rapid deployment. It could carry up to 17 people, 6 in front, 11 in the rear. For small units operating hundreds of miles from support, it was survival. But there's what the BV-206 couldn't do. It topped out at 40 miles per hour with limited range. It had no armor, not even protection from small arms fire. Its payload capacity was just 4,960 pounds. In modern terms, it was a logistics vehicle from an era when Arctic operations meant small unit patrols, not brigade-level maneuvers. By 2020, America's Arctic strategy had fundamentally changed. The 11th Airborne Division wasn't just defending Alaska anymore. It was projecting power across the entire Arctic region. In March 2024, paratroopers flew over the North Pole from Alaska to Norway, conducting joint operations with NATO allies. These weren't symbolic exercises. They were rehearsals for rapid deployment in response to Russian aggression. The Pentagon needed something better, not just an incremental upgrade, a platform that could support extended operations, carry more troops and cargo, integrate with modern command systems, and do it all while maintaining the Arctic mobility that made the BV-206 legendary. Enter Beowulf. Beowulf looks similar to its predecessor. 2 articulated bodies, massive rubber tracks, Scandinavian engineering. But that's where the similarities end. Start with the basics. Beowulf measures 26 feet long and can carry more than 17,600 pounds of payload, nearly 4 times the old SUSV's capacity. It's powered by a Cummins diesel engine delivering 280 horsepower, paired with an Allison 6-speed transmission. Top speed, 40 miles per hour. Range, 621 miles, massively extending operational reach. But here's where it gets interesting. BAE Systems built Beowulf based on the BVS10 family, a platform that's been proven in demanding operations by 5 European countries: Sweden, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, France, and Austria. The BVS-10's armored variant saw extensive use in Afghanistan by British forces, where its low ground pressure proved invaluable against improvised explosive devices. Most anti-tank mines require more weight to detonate than the BVS-10 exerts. Beowulf takes that proven platform and adapts it for American Arctic operations. The engine, transmission, and hydraulic systems all come from US suppliers, ensuring parts availability and maintenance support. The modular rear compartment can be reconfigured for dozens of mission profiles: troop transport, logistics, medical evacuation, command and control. Wait, it gets better. Beowulf can carry up to 14 fully equipped soldiers, slightly fewer than the BV-206's 17-person capacity. But here's what matters. The payload capacity is nearly 4 times larger. While the old SUSV maxed out at 4,960 pounds, Beowulf can haul 17,600 pounds of cargo. For Arctic operations, this is the real game changer. You can carry more ammunition, more cold weather gear, more medical supplies, more fuel. Extended operations aren't just about moving troops, they're about sustaining them. Beowulf trades 3 seats for an extra 12,600 pounds of mission-critical equipment. That's the difference between a 3-day patrol and a 2-week operation. The vehicle is fully amphibious. Unlike the old SUSV, which struggled in choppy water, Beowulf's improved hydrodynamics let it handle coastal operations and river crossings more effectively. This capability is crucial for operations along Alaska's thousands of miles of coastline and riverine environments. Like its predecessor, Beowulf can be slung under a CH-47 Chinook. But there's a twist. If you only have UH-60 Blackhawks available, You can disassemble Beowulf, transport it in 2 helicopter loads, and reassemble it on site. The 11th Airborne Division already trains for this exact scenario. Now here's the strategic piece most people miss. In August 2022, BAE Systems received a $278 million contract for initial cold weather all-terrain vehicle production. That sounds straightforward. But in December 2024, the Army added another $68 million for 44 additional vehicles, a $48 million extension to full-rate production, plus $20 million for 2025 funding. Production is accelerating. The first Beowulf was delivered in July 2023, less than 1 year after contract award. All first-year vehicles were delivered by the end of fiscal year 2024. On December 11, 2024, new Beowulfs were conducting air assault training operations at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, demonstrating the vehicle's integration into airborne operations. This production timeline reveals the Pentagon's urgency. They're not treating this as a routine vehicle replacement. They're fielding a capability as fast as manufacturing allows. And there's the global context. Germany and the United Kingdom are jointly procuring their own Arctic vehicles through a collaborative program. The Netherlands and Sweden have joined. Norway, which operates over 4,000 BV-206s, is watching closely. NATO allies are coordinating Arctic mobility capabilities like never before. Meanwhile, Russia operates the largest Arctic military presence on Earth. 24,140 kilometers of Arctic coastline, dozens of military bases, advanced missile systems, and submarine forces. China has invested billions in Arctic infrastructure through its Polar Silk Road initiative, part of the Belt and Road Project. Chinese and Russian bombers now conduct joint patrols near Alaska. In September 2024, the U.S. deployed elements of the 11th Airborne Division to Shemya Island in response to nearby Russian exercises. The Arctic has become a contested domain, and Beowulf gives American forces something they haven't had in decades: the ability to project power across the Arctic at a time when every mile matters. Russia and China can build bases, they can deploy bombers, they can conduct exercises, but they can't stop American troops from reaching anywhere in the Arctic, on land, across water, and through terrain that would stop conventional forces cold. The strategic implications extend far beyond Alaska. Beowulf represents America's answer to a fundamental Arctic problem. How do you project credible military power across a region where infrastructure barely exists? Russia maintains extensive Arctic bases and can move forces along its northern coastline. China has economic leverage through massive investments in Arctic projects. The U.S. response isn't to match them base for base or investment for investment. Instead, America is betting on rapid deployment and extreme mobility. The 11th Airborne Division has transformed from a garrison force into an expeditionary unit capable of Arctic operations worldwide. In March 2024, they flew over the North Pole to conduct airborne operations in Norway, a demonstration that American Arctic forces can reach NATO allies' territory in hours. Beowulf makes these operations sustainable. Consider the operational calculus. Russian forces can mass along their Arctic frontier, but they're constrained by geography. They need roads, bases, supply lines. American forces with Beowulf can bypass traditional infrastructure entirely, paradrop onto frozen lakes, swim across coastal waters, traverse terrain that would stop conventional vehicles, resupply by helicopter. This changes deterrence dynamics. Russia can't simply fortify positions and assume they're unreachable. Any point in the Arctic becomes potentially contestable if American forces can get there with the troops and equipment needed to establish presence. There's also the alliance dimension. NATO's Article 5 mutual defense commitment covers Arctic territories of member states, including Norway, Iceland, and now Finland and Sweden. If conflict erupted, the U.S. needs capability to rapidly reinforce allies' northern territories. Beowulf-equipped units can deploy to Europe, conduct airborne insertion, link up with local forces, and operate in Arctic conditions that would paralyze most military units. The economic stakes are massive. The Northern Sea Route could eventually handle a significant portion of global trade between Asia and Europe. Russia sees this as a strategic choke point under its control. China sees it as economic opportunity. The West needs to ensure these routes remain open under international law rather than Russian control. Military presence enables diplomatic leverage. American Arctic-capable forces backing NATO allies change negotiations over maritime rights, resource extraction, and regional governance. Russia and China can't simply dictate terms when the U.S. can credibly operate throughout the region. This isn't about controlling the Arctic. It's about ensuring no single power can dominate it. The Arctic arms race has barely begun. As ice continues melting, the strategic significance of the high north will only intensify. Russia is modernizing its northern fleet. China is building its third icebreaker. Both countries are investing heavily in Arctic-capable military systems. The U.S. response will extend beyond Beowulf. The Army is standing up new Arctic training centers. Infrastructure in Alaska is being upgraded to support larger-scale operations. Cold weather equipment across all systems is being modernized. The 11th Airborne Division continues expanding its unique Arctic expertise. But questions remain. Will the current procurement be enough? The U.S. military once operated over 1,100 SUSVs across all services. Current contracts cover just over 200 Beowulfs, barely enough for one division. If Arctic operations expand, and every strategic indicator suggests they will, the Army may need hundreds more. There's also the technology evolution. Beowulf is based on proven 2010s-era design. By the 2030s, what capabilities will Arctic vehicles need? Autonomous operation in whiteout conditions, integration with drone swarms, electronic warfare systems? The modular design allows upgrades, but at some point, the platform's fundamental architecture will limit what's possible. And there's the geopolitical wildcard, climate change. If Arctic ice melts faster than projected, the entire strategic picture shifts. Suddenly, naval forces become more important than ground mobility. Shipping routes open earlier each year. Resource extraction becomes easier. The frozen frontier that makes Beowulf so valuable could transform into something requiring entirely different military capabilities. What's certain is this: for the next 2 decades, Beowulf will be the vehicle that enables American Arctic operations. Every exercise will validate its capabilities. Every deployment will demonstrate American commitment to Arctic security. Every Beowulf rolling off the production line in Sweden will be closely watched by Russian and Chinese intelligence. Remember that December 2024 training operation in Alaska, the one we opened with? Those paratroopers weren't just training. They were sending a message. The Arctic is contested. The U.S. is equipped, and America's Arctic Wolf Pack is ready to operate anywhere the mission demands.